Welcome to Simplify. I'm Caitlin Schiller.
I'm Ben Schuman-Stoler.
Hello.
Live from Chicago.
Live from Berlin, Germany. Have we ever remotely recorded a bookend? I feel like we haven't, actually.
I don't know.
I don't think so. I think this is a Simplify first.
But that's what happens when you're always on. You got to give the people what they want.
That's true. Give them that good simplified dope.
Hey, before we start with this episode, I have more salad news for you.
Oh my God, tell me.
So there was
Today in salads.
Look at what I found. I don't know, send it to you. How do you send?
Are you sending via?
Yeah. Here, I'll put it here in the chat. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Okay, look. Click on that.
What is this? The Hill I Will Die in breakfast cereal is for babies. I eat salad in the mornings like a grown-up. Oh, okay, Jack Kelly. You've got opinions, I see.
Do you see this? The Hill I Will Die on feature in The Guardian.
I mean, okay. I've had a breakfast salad before. Do you remember when I used to eat breakfast salads at Blinkist?
I eat breakfast salad almost every day.
Oh, okay. The Hill I Will Die on. I didn't know that was like a feature. Anyway, welcome to Simplify, where we have all of your hottest salad news. We are an ideas and salad-based team.
Yeah, books and salad.
Anyway, hi. Great to see you. This is such an exciting day.
Is it?
Yeah, we are, for the first time in a long time, we're here to talk about a Ben Schuman-Stoler interview.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I haven't done one in ages.
About 6 seasons, maybe 7.
But people come for your interviews, you know? I
don't know, but maybe they'll stay for yours. Who knows?
That's good.
Maybe we'll unlock a whole new audience. Yeah, anyway.
True. I got to talk to Joanna Walsh, who wrote a book called Amateurs that I really liked. And it's about the internet.
Yes.
Specifically.
One of my favorite things.
Yeah, like the internet. I think the subtitle is The Internet That You Created.
Yeah.
Right? The idea that amateurs are people that do things out of love. Mm-hmm. And that so much of the internet was created like as a passion project. Like I'm not talking about necessarily the technical parts of the internet, but the Tumblr pages, the blogs, the memes, those like great momentary flashes of hilarity that we all went through.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so Joanna Walsh works in the arts. She's in academia. It's a little bit of a different Simplify interview. It's a good summer episode. It's a bit short. We talked about what does it mean to be an amateur. We talked about the internet. We talked about what's going wrong, what we all kind of feel is changing in the internet and what's going wrong. And hopefully that's enough for people to get into it. And then you and I can hash it out in the bookend.
Yeah. I loved it. I had a lot of fun listening to it, so I think everybody else will too.
One thing before we start the interview, like we've been putting up some videos. We've been doing some video experiments. That's what we said we'd do.
We did. Ben has added a whole new treasure trove of skills to his quiver.
I mean, we're experimenting, but if you go onto YouTube, onto the Simplify page, we're going to start putting up some of the outros and bookends. Mm-hmm. And we will probably keep those on YouTube, but maybe eventually have some stuff on the feed. We're not going to stop our audio podcast also for now. No. This is just a few months of experiments, but we'd love to hear if people like them, what people wish. Like I said, we're experimenting with the formats, with the lighting, with the editing, publishing. So go please check it out. I mean, it's new for Caitlin and I to be on video, so bear with us, but help us. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Go check it out. You can see our faces.
You can see our faces. And yeah. All right. Should we play it? Joanna Walsh, thanks very much for coming on Simplify. We like to get started by asking our guests to introduce themselves, how they prefer to be introduced. How do you like to be introduced?
I just don't know. That's my problem. I think part of my modus operandi is I'm always trying new things. Primarily, I work with text, so I guess you could call me a writer.
Today, we're going to talk mostly about your book, Amateurs, which is actually amateurs ! So maybe it's like amateurs.
Yeah, well, I wanted to actually do 3 exclamation marks and then a number 1, which is the internet way of saying I was so enthusiastic. I kind of thought that encapsulated the kind of the naive enthusiasm with which people like me rushed towards the internet in the 2000s because it offered so much that wasn't available offline. And yet those promises were very imperfectly kept.
And so why did you talk about how you were deciding between the title between amateurs and users or user?
Yeah.
Like, why did you in the end go with amateur instead of user?
I liked the users, but I'm glad I didn't go for it in the end. I partly didn't because someone had written a novel a few years ago about internet use called Users. I think it's too negative. And in the end, what I wanted to do was valorize what has gone on online so that people don't forget it. Even 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was published, Jarek Kobek was writing a book called I Hate the Internet? Or I think that is a common attitude. People are there online and they're saying, I hate it here. And yes, there are lots of good reasons to hate it, but there is so much that has been achieved. There's so much we can learn from. And particularly there's so much that kind of builds a solidarity, a political solidarity, when we're thinking about asking for rights and demand, not just asking for demanding rights to our own creative output.
Yeah. And you said something like in the book, an amateur loves something.
Yeah, well, that's the French meaning of the word, which, comes from amour and aimer, and so all those words about love. The definition of amateur in France, where I spend a lot of time, is much more positive than it is in the English language. It's more like, it's an enthusiastic hobbyist, an expert even, someone who dedicates themselves to a subject or to a practice without expecting recompense. But, often these are the real experts.
Yeah, yeah. And you wrote more about this in another book of yours, Girl Online. But what does it actually mean to have an online identity? You have this great quote, sometimes like anyone else, I Google myself to find out who I am.
I still do that. Sometimes I do it to find out what I'm doing next week. If I'm doing events, I just think, what time is it? Where is it? I have to look. Girl Online is really about the position that people who enter the internet as a femme space are forced into. Again, it offers so many opportunities, or has offered so many opportunities that don't occur offline, but it comes with, as kind of offline femme identities, it comes with a lot of kind of strictures around how you self-present, what you're allowed to say there, and the kind of disjunct between this persona, either online or offline, and the realities of living as a woman.
Yeah. So what should people do to actually feel better about being online? I mean, besides just logging off, it seems like...
Oh, don't log off. No.
Don't log off. But so you think people should stay online. Where are you finding the constructive spaces? Actually, I talked to a Stanford professor earlier this week. He's been teaching for 30, 40 years or something. He said he found out from a student that there's a new app that students are using that where you have to have an .edu address, and people are just kind of sharing, really simple images of like what they ate and what they're up to, and he's like laughing. It's like this was the beginning of Twitter. This was the beginning of Facebook.
It was the beginning of Facebook, very literally, because that was a university site originally. But it's interesting that what it comes down to in the end is this kind of desire to connect in a very basic way and to connect in a very human way, just to kind of say, okay, this was my day. Anyway, so where I am at the moment now is I'm on Instagram because I work with a lot of artists and usually they want to send photos of their stuff. So there's a kind of good arts community on Instagram. I don't love using Instagram either. And personally, I'm much more words oriented. You can't have a braided conversation like you can on Twitter or Blue Sky. But, Blue Sky I found for me is very academic. I've got a lot of academic contents on there, which is great, but it's an entirely different flavor. And it's sort of, for me, less personal. And I know people who put the same content on, a range of platforms. But I don't know, I tend to be a bit more adaptive to the circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just started a Substack. So I did a Substack project, a one-off in 2022, and it was just more like blogging. But now I find it's like a whole social media. So I don't know how that's going to play out with these kind of notes and things. I've only just got involved in it. So I was actually hoping for an escape from the pressure to have more conversations and post more little notes. But here it is again.
Right.
I was talking to Tobias Ryan, the editor of Minor Lit's online magazine, literary journal, and he said that with the kind of decay of social media, he has migrated to new platforms. It's difficult because he has to build up an audience all over again. And he finds that the problem now with social media is people are less invested in actually in not doing just performative presence. So he finds that he puts up a post. A lot of people like it, but he notices, because he can see the stats, very few people click through to read it, far fewer than when, Twitter was the main outlet for literary magazines. There was a sense of community, which I think really in the early 2010s, there really was. There was a sense that you wanted to read each other's work. And also that you had time to. I mean, the proliferation of content, which is not AI content, it's content provided, again, freely by people. I'm doing a Substack now. I'm entirely part of this, but what else can you do?
Yeah.
It's very confusing. You don't have time to read.
Yeah. It used to be that Twitter was where you would find really interesting things to read, and you would open them all up in tabs, and then you would go to the cafe and go through them on a Saturday morning, and then respond to them kind of thoughtfully, or write some witty, one sentence takedown or response or whatever. And then if you wanted to, you could kind of get into it in the replies with people or with the writer themselves who would be watching, obviously.
Which is amazing. That was really the most amazing thing for me, because when I started writing, I wasn't, very well connected at all. I had young children at the time. I didn't have a place to, I couldn't take time off to go to readings. I had pretty limited financial capabilities. So my community became online, and it was incredibly helpful. You could talk to people. I couldn't believe you could talk to an actual published writer, and they would write back, and they'd also take you seriously. You could have a good conversation with them. They'd give you recommendations. They were happy to do that. 15 years later, writers are a lot more cagey about who they engage with and how.
Yeah, it's also been weaponized, right? I mean, we all know somebody. I mean, I have a friend who was doxxed pretty bad, and he ended up in a fit of anxiety. He couldn't sleep. He was afraid someone was going to come to his house.
That's terrifying.
Ended up, deleting all the social media stuff. But I think on the positive side, to stay on that, we see it. We saw, I mean, I don't know how much this still happens now, but we would see things like somebody would write such good blog posts or have such good data or do such good analyses that they would then manage to cross the divide between amateur and professional.
Yeah.
Like, for some reason, the only example that's coming to me is football, soccer, where these data nerds, legends online would do these breakdowns until they actually would get hired by the teams. Right? And the teams would be like, wait a minute, if these guys are so good, then they would just hire them. And some of them now are established, right? They're established professionals in this certain kind of data, sports, science kind of space, but started as amateurs who just loved running the numbers and looking for something to share. Not because they were trying to get a job necessarily, but because there was something interesting in the conversation that they could start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's my story to an extent as well, and it happens in writing too. I started by being online, writing online, writing at first for literary journals that didn't pay, which is kind of controversial, but I've just written a piece about that for the Boston Review, because I think those were very important gateways for writers who don't have a kind of easy way in. I think now it's much more difficult for a number of reasons, not only the situation I just described about the kind of information overload and the lack of click-through and the kind of dispersal of communities, but also what's happening in offline publishing, the defunding of independent presses, the crackdown on the defunding of arts and humanity courses.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of other things that are happening in publishing, AI, the kind of consolidation of publishers, rather like platforms who they're such big ships to sail that they don't dare to take a risk.
Yeah. What about the sort of rise of the generalist? I think we can all say the amateur internet has changed into something else. We could talk about that again in a couple of minutes, but one way that I can imagine looking forward in a kind of positive way is that there was a moment where it was you have to specialize, you have to be a coder, you have to be a designer, you have to be a copywriter, you have to master your skill, and that's the only way to make it kind of in the internet professionally. And then there was a kind of change to no, you have to be a generalist, you have to have good taste, and you have to be able to sit back and understand a lot of different skills, but you don't necessarily have to be master level 10 skill in any particular one. Mm-hmm. I'm avoiding talking about AI just yet.
No, sure, yeah.
But Do you think that there's something in there as a way forward that is encouraging, or maybe the way being amateur has transposed in 2026?
I mean, I don't know whether this is being welcomed or not. I would say generalism is it should be what the people who are good at that kind of thing want to do. But, some people are not good at that. And I think some of the most interesting work comes from people who are very good at one thing, or very good at a bizarrely specific range of things. They don't have to be related. They don't have to be the smoothness of package is not really what we want from, to get the best work. There are people who are very good at, like, let's make some things up, trout fishing and, coding, or there should be a randomness. When, if you're talking about generalism, that's kind of an employable technique. And I feel that generalists will always have to subcontract to specialists or have their own special area of interest, even if they are able to do a larger range of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think, it's hard not to feel like everything that replaced Web 2.0 is worse? Like if you had to kind of boil it down, what do you think it was?
Profiteering. Just platforms realized that they could make profits. They could make more profits. They could squeeze. They could manipulate. So capitalism.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, let's talk about AI. Is AI stupliminal, which is a term in your book?
Well, that's a CNI term. She was talking about Gertrude Stein's kind of piling on of language. But that's a really interesting comparison, because what AI can do is proliferation and, paralleling, so can kind of tell you a lot of words or use a lot of words instead of one. So that, one of the first things that AI type apps did was generate beer names for you, or kind of RPG characters. Mm-hmm. It was like taking the characteristics of a certain kind of language and reproducing them. I've written AIs myself. I don't work with commercial AI because it's extremely problematic. It steals work from content creators of all kinds, writers, artists, amateurs. The only AI projects I've done, I've actually coded myself. And I've coded them really badly because I'm not a good coder. But I think that's part of the project for me. Part of it is seeing what someone who's not a professional coder can make with GitHub recipes that do a similar job. Yeah, what was the original question about AI? Is it stuplime? I think the ones that I made were just because they were. I did a text generator in about 2020, which was early, and I did an early chatbot, which is unfortunately defunct. But I want these things to stand as kind of projects that are critiques of commercial AI. When I made the chatbot, it was not at all normal for people to have a conversation with AI, and people were really excited about it. I know that I set it up as an installation in the Beta Festival in Ireland, and there was no online, there was no kind of Claude, there was no ChatGPT, and people were typing questions, and I printed them out on a long roll of receipt paper, and I displayed the questions along with the installation, and it was really kind of questions about their personal lives, questions about the future, questions about technology, questions about politics, about what they should do, about what they should have for dinner. And it was absolutely wonderful and fascinating. I've got a lot of that tape still. So that kind of what people want of AI is, and similar to when we were talking about what people want of social media, they just want to exchange photos of their dinner. Or it's just completely fascinating that goes on.
Yeah, those spaces where people created what they wanted then led to these, to the Tumblrs, to IMDb, to archive.org, to these useful spaces that people have a lot of warmth and love for in memory. And the ones that it seems like we have to work around them to build our communities, or we have to hack them, or we have to build something. But I also think, I was reading a piece of advice for new grads from a recent grad. It was a Gen Z giving advice to Gen Z. And I loved it. And one of the first piece of advice was no nostalgia. Just don't. It wasn't as good as we think, and we have our whole life in front of us. Mm-hmm. So just don't. And I do like how you say AI art is about having a what if thought. And that's incredibly empowering. You say something like, I have a quote here, imagining and articulating the unimaginable in AI art could hold the key to an aesthetic revolution that is also political.
Yeah, that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek because obviously, it's a revolution which doesn't necessarily benefit the people who are using it. I wrote that essay in 2023 when, outpainting was kind of something that suddenly became exciting. I was very interested and kind of positively interested by, I guess, what we could call, can use this word vulgarity. That was typical of its products. When I use the word vulgarity, I'm very pro the word vulgarity because I'm thinking of it in a dual sense. Both it means in bad taste, but it also means of the people. I like to see people take Girl with a Pearl Earring and kind of mash it up and make it kind of, less refined, less gate-kept, less pure. That was something that I really liked to see. At the time, I felt that there was something positive about the appropriation of what had previously been considered high art and the mixing it in a way that was, again, not controlled. I think the results were surprising. I like to see what people do when they say, hey, look at this painting, which I'd have to go to a special museum to see. And, then I'd have to feel like I was the right sort of person to be able to approach it. I like to see everything that's inherent in the reactions to this, the aspiration, the desire, the admiration, but also the violence, the kind of humour, everything that was going on at the time in these kind of reappropriations, often consciously ugly or bizarre remixes of art that we'd all been taught to respect.
Yeah, we're coming close to the end, but I have a couple more questions. When will we know when we're officially in the dead internet?
I just don't know. I don't know. The dead internet is when we see a lot of it around already. Bots answering other bots producing visuals, other bots clicking on it. When the internet is circularly and entirely just non-human. And the thing is, obviously, I think it's going on already because we don't know about it. And we're at the margins looking at it. It's like standing on the edge of the sea. We don't know how big it is. We don't know how deep it is because we're only seeing the bits that we notice.
Well, how will we know? How
will we know when the internet is dead? We won't. We won't. Yeah. Or maybe we will continue living on its margins, like people living on the coast and fishing, eking out an existence on the edge of something that kind of doesn't include them.
This journey from a bunch of amateurs making the internet to humans standing on the edge of an ocean watching is powerful. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, maybe as a last question, I told you I was reading this Gen Z advice to Gen Z, and I'm curious, what advice would you give, actually, a recent grad? How do you deal with the kind of anxiety of this moment in labor, in society, in technology, with your perspective of art, of creativity, of belief in the communities and the sort of human perspectives? How do you deliver that to somebody that's feeling anxious or cynical or despairing?
I don't think I have a different attitude to them. I was talking to one of the writers that I most respect on Instagram, and I'm not going to reveal her name, but she said, I've never felt so demoralized. The marginalization of human creativity by, not just by AI, as I said, it's easy to blame AI. It's a lot of different systems are contributing to this, from government systems, which are aggressively unsupporting, desupporting artists, to the commercial world, which is also panicking, desperate to kind of make money out of art, but and therefore less willing to bet on people who are doing the most innovative work. So I've done a masterclass, and I just said I don't have anything good to say about what's going on in publishing right now, apart from, that's not true. There are wonderful indies, but they're increasingly struggling, which is awful. And wonderful bookshops like the one you're sitting in the back of today. And when I launched Amateurs, I did a European tour of indie bookshops, and I will never be so grateful for the kind of support. They're like lighthouses. It was so exciting. And just to think that there are these people, carrying the torch for interesting, creative output is wonderful. So what can we do about it? On a professional level, we absolutely have to unionise. I'm part of Praxis, the Arts Union of Ireland, Artists Union. I'm also a member of IFOT, the University Teachers Union. everyone who is in any kind of unionizable situation should unionize, and there are lots of kind of unions which bring together independent traders. I spoke for the left in the European Parliament about internet culture in April, so it was very interesting to see people like the CGT in France, which is really about getting people who run their own business together and acting on their behalf, which is obviously it's a very difficult thing to do, but they're doing it. Unionize at a professional level. It's difficult because what I'm talking about in amateurs is preserving this unmonetized space. And of course, it's very difficult to argue for that. As I said, I've argued positively for the kind of literary journals that don't pay, that create a space for innovation. They don't pay, their staff aren't paid. They're usually kind of labors of love. They're founded by one person or a few people. So I think those are intensely valuable spaces for experimentation, and they need to be preserved. It would be great if they were funded, but then that would bring up the whole difficulty of professionalization. I think this comes back to agitating, and along with AI and other erosions to people's ability to collectively bargain for any kind of decent pay and conditions whatsoever. I think that the thing that everyone should be campaigning for is really a stronger level of state intervention, basic income. In Ireland, there is a limited basic income scheme which has just been introduced for artists. That's something. But yeah, I think that should be extended. And I think we should be fighting for that. We should be fighting for better tax and spend. It's the old story.
Yeah. It does kind of keep coming back to this feeling of like, we have to go back to maintaining the wins that we had in kind of the 19th century.
It's a very old-fashioned strategy, but I can't see a better strategy than kind of coming together, unionizing, and using group power as far as we're able.
Yeah. All right. Joanna Walsh, thank you so much for your time. People should check out your new Substack, which is called, what's it called again?
It's called Theory of Style. I think I just wanted to do something that was an amateur passion project. I really wanted to write about fashion in serious critical terms, using critical theory. I've done about 2-3 posts so far. So I hope you will go and give it a read.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Joanna Walsh. Thanks for your time, and have a good one.
The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, so I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten-free, and HSA FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at Groons.co. That's code podcast at GRUNS.co.
Thank you.
Welcome to the bookend, where we end with books.
Wow. It feels good to be on the other side of that, not to say that.
Right? And I was like, man, I loved like my prep for this. It felt so much simpler, and and also I was a little more insecure about it, because I usually come as like the subject area expert. I've done the interview, I remember it, but when you're not the one who's actually done the interview, you just have to listen carefully in kind of a different way. So it was a fun experience. Yeah, we should do more of this.
Nice.
Anyway, that was really cool and interesting. And I really liked Joanna Walsh's perspectives. And I loved hearing about the AI projects she's done. There's a lot we could talk about. My notes say personas online and offline, performative self, community. Where would you like to start? What's stuck with you?
The main thing for me is this feeling that I want to fight off nostalgia. I feel like there's a lot of nostalgia out there. A lot of it was better before this and that political moment, this and that technological change, this and that economic moment. And that's totally fair. And I think we all have that. We feel that. We feel like something's gotten worse on the internet, or we miss our spaces that now are paid spaces or something. So I liked, I mean, Joanna's not hugely optimistic about where things are going, but in a way kind of calling that out and saying, okay, maybe what has replaced Web 2.0 is worse, or it's definitely something totally different. But that doesn't mean that we should just stop. Doesn't mean we should just give up and spend all our time, wishing for lolcats and I Can Has Cheeseburger and long gone Tumblr pages,
Yeah. And I mean, the internet has moved on. We couldn't go back to that even if we wanted to, I don't think, even though, Gen Alpha is like into resurrecting those things. And she says very adamantly, I think you ask her, what should we do to feel better about being online? Should we just log off? And she was like, no, don't log off.
Right.
Which kind of surprised me, to be honest. But she did talk about, that sort of led into this conversation where she said that she tends to share different things in different places. Like Blue Sky is for her academic community and Instagram is for her art community. And I thought that was kind of interesting too, because that's like another layer. Well, let me tee that up in a different way. I'm wondering if that is more or less performative when you break out different aspects of self and put them on display for different channels. Is that appropriate? Or I'm not saying it's like wrong or anything, but does that mean that she's like eliding some of her own Joanna Walsh authenticity by only showing certain parts of herself on certain channels? Or is that just, I don't know. I thought it was an interesting choice.
It's part of the fact that everything's become professionalized and it's no longer amateur.
That's true.
Mean, if in it used to be like you could be goofy, you could have a good time. Now it's like, well, I have to make the right choice of which persona am I on Substack? Yeah. How do I want to present myself on Instagram? What strategy should I take on Blue Sky? We've come a long way from here's a picture of my taco for lunch or whatever. I'm just going to throw this. And I'm not saying that was better. I used to hate people that just shared pictures of their lunches, but that was awesome. Also, now I miss it. But
that's why you follow me on Instagram
to see your salad pictures.
Exactly.
In her previous book, Girl Online, she asked this question, right? Sometimes, I think the quote is, sometimes like anyone else, I Google myself to find out who I am.
And what I'm doing. And I thought that was really charming. Yeah.
And yet now it's like, I Google myself to see how people would see my CV, how people would see me professionally, because we're all a different person online. It's not really like a pure space. It's not an honest space necessarily, right? I mean, LinkedIn is full of braggadocio. Instagram is famously only the happy stuff. It's here's my boat or whatever. It's look, like it's hard to I don't want to pass a judgment on how people are using social media or the internet or something. I think there's still really, really cool spaces. I'm part of a image sharing community called Mulch Shop. I've been a part of for like 15 years, and it's super supportive, super lovely. And kids are finding their way to, we've talked about like safe internet usage in other episodes. Like this is all, it's changing. I just like this perspective of amateurism. And
me too.
The kind of, what's the difference between an amateur and a professional? It's love. It's just doing something out of love.
It's love, and it's also yes, and I'm not even like that. There's no contest
and not
there.
Getting paid, I guess. Yeah,
not getting paid, and also I think it sort of getting to be an amateur in any arena also means that you get to be courageous and weird and find something out. But if you're professionalized in every single space where you show up, you never get to be brave and take a chance, except in a way that you're insulated against failure or looking bad. And I think that that's like really too bad. Actually, that's a huge loss. And I in a way, it made me think about Berlin. And how Berlin, when you and I moved here, 20 years ago, 16 years ago?
Yeah.
It was a really different place. And I'm not like lamenting old Berlin, but it really we had jokes about like, if you can't make it in Berlin, you can't make it anywhere because it's okay for you to just try stuff,
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure that that's true anymore. Like a few years ago here, I started painting and I had an art show. And that is not something I would have done if I lived in New York City, I think. And and Berlin was a really safe place to do something kind of like dilettantish and amateur and fun in that way. And I think the internet was like that too. It was more of like a wilderness. And there's this like whole rewilding the internet movement. And I don't mean to be nostalgic, but I do think we lose something when we lose spaces in which we can be weird and not have fully gone through the rock tumbler,
Absolutely. I think that's the whole idea. And I hope people listening, like, this is a bit of a different simplify approach, and maybe it was a bit theoretical in the interview, but I hope that this sort of perspective just adds something to people's lives. Like, can I be an amateur? Where can I be a beginner? There was also a thing about beginner's approach, right? Beginner's principles. Like, it's a healthy thing to look at something with a fresh perspective.
Beginner's mindset.
Beginner's mindset. Thank you.
It didn't appear in this interview, but that's like a known.
Of course,
thing.
Right? It's a bit different than being an amateur, because amateurs can also be like great experts at something, great tinkerers, not beginners,
Mm-hmm.
The idea of an amateur, of somebody like in a wood shop and the weekends just making, sculptures or something, but just for fun, or just working on an engine of something, like.
Do you want to tell me about a new hobby, Ben?
No way. No,
Chainsaw sculptures in your garage?
Exactly. But that might have, just because you're an amateur doesn't mean you're not an expert. It just means that you're approaching it without the need to do it 9 to 5, do it professionally. And the internet's changed. But anyway, it's a fun thing to talk about. I think it's a cool summer episode. I hope people can take it to their barbecues and reminisce on their favorite 2014 meme or whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, that was cool. I really liked the interview. It was really fun to be a passenger for this one. And thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me do it.
Letting you. Sure. No problem. By all means.
All right. You got books?
I do. I have one. This is kind of, how does this relate to what we were talking about? It doesn't precisely relate to nostalgia, but we talk about like, what is there to look back upon and miss? And like what you just said, what is your favorite thing about 2014 internet? So I chose this book called What to Save and Why by Erich Hattala Mattis. Eric Hattala Mattis. He's a professor at Wellesley. Okay. And it's about conservation, and how conservation is an expression of identity, and how what we choose to save shapes our future.
Oh, cool.
It is actually really, really cool. And he talks a lot about how objects and places and this intangible cultural heritage obviously don't exist in isolation. The only way that they are meaningful is in context. Mm-hmm. So in a way, when you take something from its natural habitat and you put it in a glass case in a museum, you are robbing it of some of its necessary context. That's, of course, there are pros and cons to that, but it basically, the book discusses what's kept and who gets to keep it, and this whole theory of like meaningful participation. The example that stuck with me was how restoring a community mural by yourself is a really different endeavor than restoring the community mural with your community. Yeah. And the second thing allows the thing that is conserved and the history that's being preserved to be part of a collective identity rather than an individual one, and sort of like adjusted to meet individual specifications. And he kind of lands on how stewardship is a good model for conservation. When it's shared across relevant communities, that's when conservation is at its best. So that's What to Save and Why by Erich Hattala Mattis. I thought it was a pretty cool book. Yeah.
It's funny because in my notes for the Joanna Walsh interview from her book, I have this bit from John Ruskin, who's a writer, and he talks about the delight in ruins.
Ooh.
And like how ruins can become picturesque, and how interesting that is when you think about it, right?
So, Pompeii is one of my favorite places I've ever been.
Yeah, but like apply that to the internet. Like that's interesting,
Yeah. The internet ruins. Ooh.
Anyway, I mean, think about like looking at Tumblr and the old scrapbooking aesthetics and like Pinterest when it first came out and
MySpace page.
Editing, selecting, methodology of collecting. You know, like it was all of a sudden everyone was a curator. All of a sudden everybody was trying to find what is my aesthetic, what are the things I want to. Anyway,
interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good exercise. Also, like it's a good creative exercise.
What is to collect?
Yeah, selecting, editing. You know. Anyway, it's what we do, right? I mean, it's this what. Anyway, all right. So I brought a writer who's more aligned to this internet-y stuff named James Bridle. They write about technology. They write about intelligence. And there's a few books that they've written, but the new Dark Age is one that I'm halfway through. Actually, it's one of those books next to my bed that I love.
I've heard of this title. Yeah.
Yeah. And they also wrote Ways of Being, which is another one, and also about intelligence. It's a few years old now, New Dark Age, but for me, like when I read it, it feels like it's putting the sentences together that I can't quite frame and like the ways that I'm feeling about technology. And so like, you know, one point that they make is like, because of this sort of unverifiable speculation and just kind of mess of takes, it's hard to feel like we understand what's happening around us.
Interesting, yeah.
But just really good writer, really good book. There's some speeches on YouTube. James Bridle, New Dark Age.
Awesome. I would like to read that. Great.
Yeah, cool.
Good recommendations. Cool episode. Happy summer to those of you who celebrate. Do you want to take us out?
No, you take us out.
Oh, God, do I have to do everything around here?
Yeah.
Simplify was produced by me, Caitlin Schiller, Ben Schuman-Stoler, Molly Hart, and João Lucas for Kollo Media Studios here in Berlin, Germany. Usually we're in the back of the Chapters bookshop, but not today. We'll be there soon. And
that's okay.
Till next time, checking out.
Checking out. Thanks for listening.